past Lord's Day, I did just a classic sermon on the two natures of Christ. Two natures, one person. It's pretty rudimentary, pretty elementary, pretty basic, essential Christian teaching about Christ being both God and man. Of course, all of that is quite an amazing mystery. What do we want to call that? I mean, how that really works out. How God, the infinite, eternal, unchangeable, steps into time and space. You know, we've got scriptures that talk about, although Christ was in very nature or form, God, was the icon of God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, Philippians chapter 2. And we just can't have, it seems, from our understanding, salvation unless God himself brings it about, because he alone has to be satisfied with the righteousness, he has to be satisfied with the sacrifice, he has to be satisfied with the justice. He can only be satisfied with himself. And yet he will offer himself for the sins that he will judge and heap his wrath upon. All this coming together in the one person of Christ. And we talk about that pretty frequently, and maybe even not considering the weight of all of it because we hear it so often. We even read about it in our Bible tracts, but it's really heavy stuff. And then apart from that, then you need the Holy Spirit to be super involved in what it means to be a Christian. He's the one who Christianizes us. He christens us, he quickens us, he regenerates us, he credits to us all that is in Christ, and he's the deposit of our inheritance. He's the surety of our resurrection. Wow, this is all incarnation. This is all Christmas. It's kind of why a lot of churches will just step aside and just focus on incarnation, what Christ brings to us in salvation. I saw this wonderful video today about a man who was an imam. He was a Muslim imam. And he had one of his students just ask the question, who is Jesus? And he said, I never really studied that. So I went to my Quran and I saw that Muhammad was mentioned 4 times and Jesus was mentioned 12 times in the Quran. And then it said, and I can't remember everything he said. It's real long. It turned out to be a longer reel than I thought I was watching. Sometimes those reels will catch you. You think they're only going to be like 10 seconds. And the next thing you know, this one goes on for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And he said, everything that the Quran says about Jesus is exemplary, that he's raised from the dead, that he's returning. I mean, the Quran says this. Said that he sends his spirit. And then Surah 1094 says, if you don't understand everything in the Quran, read the Bible and ask the Christian, which is really interesting. I didn't look up Surah 1094. If someone wants to look that up and verify that. But anyway, he said, after I was like a preacher in the Muslim faith, and after reading that the Quran speaks more of Jesus and speaks of him as though he were God, I became very excited and interested, and that led me to Christianity. He said his own Quran led him to Christianity. That was interesting. Yeah, so right. It is the Holy Spirit that does that. Of course, I wouldn't tell people to read the Quran to find the gospel, but Just a curious question from one of his students, probably innocently asked, and it changed his life. So I thought that was a compelling presentation. So now we have another holy book called the Tanakh, which is the Jewish Bible. And we say it speaks of Christ. And one of the titles that Jesus takes to himself is the title Son of Man, which we find in the Old Testament as a very curious and interesting person. And I always reference it, but I've never preached a whole sermon on it, about the Son of Man, mentioned in the Old Testament. Now, Jesus calls himself Son of Man about 80 times. Ezekiel is called the Son of Man 90 times. And for some reason, Ezekiel is the winner of the Son of Man reference. And Daniel's called the Son of Man once. Daniel himself is called the Son of Man. And I don't know who else is. So I wanted to show you a resource that I typically run into when I'm asking questions of the Bible. Of course, we're going to come back to this. This is Chabad.org. But the first thing I wanted to look at is this thing called the Hermeneutic Stack Exchange, Biblical Hermeneutics. And people ask questions, kind of like weighty questions, and usually guys with some bona fides speak up. And so someone asked the question, Ezekiel is the only prophet regularly referred to by God as the Son of Man, Ben Adam. So man is Adam in the Hebrew Bible. I wish I knew, sorry, maybe someone here might know, why Adam just keeps the name Adam and we don't call him man and Eve. God created Adam, male and female. He created Adam. In the image of God, he created Adam. All right, that's the way the Genesis phrase goes. And the man is called Ish, and the woman is called Isha in the Hebrew. So, son of man, Adam means man, Adam, okay? This is particularly interesting to Christians since Jesus took the title Son of Man upon himself, and then it goes to Greek, ha, huios, to anthropoi. And we know that anthropology is the study of people. Okay. Okay, excuse me. Almost done with this cough. This person says, I've heard three primary interpretations of this passage. The Son of Man, that Jesus calls himself Son of Man. That is connected to Daniel 3:17 and is messianic. And I think everyone loves to go there because there we find Christ in the Old Testament. And then I don't know why he chooses these words. It is, quote, puny human in contrast to the transcendence of God. Understood carefully, this needs to be not be inconsistent with the messianic interpretation. In other words, we are just men and God is way greater than we are. That's why Ezekiel is referenced as the Son of Man, is to place himself in contradistinction to who God is. And you'll also find some people, and I think we might run into it again, because Ezekiel's given so many visions, it's like you would think he is someone special, but no, he's just a son of man. It is son of Adam in contrast to sons of Israel. And so there's a reading from Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 3. Then he said to me, Son of man, I am sending you to the sons of Israel, to a rebellious people who have rebelled against me. So Israel are called the sons of Israel, the sons of the wrestlers. And of course, Ezekiel is a post-exilic prophet. He's the one who sees the wheel in the middle of the wheel vision, and it leaves Jerusalem and it goes east. And, I'm not particularly 100% sure about that interpretation, but it seems to me that God's willing to travel wherever his people go. The temple's been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. Where is God? God can go anywhere. You got a different interpretation for that? You just gave an interesting quizzical look.
Is that, are you talking in reference to just chapter 1?
From Ezekiel?
Yeah.
So, well, yes, sir.
Yeah, it says, I am sending you to the sons of Israel. So is Ezekiel not a Jew then? Is he a prophet of like from Moab or
No,
something?
good question. No, he's considered Jewish. He's considered even from the priestly tribe of Levi, I think.
Okay.
So,
Chapter is the one we were talking about.
I'm in Ezekiel 2:3. You're talking about the wheel in the middle of the wheel vision? That's chapter 1. So anyways, why is he called son of Adam? Because he's setting Ezekiel apart from the rebellious nation. Like, I'm not incorporating you into the people I'm judging. And kind of along the lines you're thinking, it's kind of, I don't know if you're thinking this, but you made me think this, is that God is not just going to work with Israel alone, especially because they always wrestle with him. But I heard, you guys know Todd Herman? He's a radio talk show host. And he did a little good defense about why it's good to wrestle with God today. About how he says, I used to hate wrestling with God. I was always wrestling with God. But now I see how it's really shaped me. And it's actually made me more familiar with God. He says, he's become a good sparring partner for me. I sort of know how he does things now. So, okay. So this guy's, he's bringing up, hey, son of man. So some people respond. From the more immediate meaning, it may have a simple way for God to humble Ezekiel for giving him many visions. That's what I told you a moment ago. The same thing was required of Paul when he had his revelations. Yet, there's some Hebrew here that comes from the tractate Sanhedrin 99a. All the prophets prophesied not, but of the days of the Messiah. Do you guys understand that quote? I think it's trying to say, correct me if you think I'm wrong, that this Jewish reference that the prophets speak of the Messiah coming in the future. All the prophets prophesied, not but of the days of the Messiah.
So is that two negatives?
I think so.
So you just take that out?
Yeah.
Prophesied of the days of the
Yeah, I think so. So this is Jewish intertestamental material. He says we have among other biblical references the idea that all the prophets were types of Christ. Of course, when we say Christ, we say anointed one, the one that was to come. And in some way spoke of Christ. Therefore, the term as it related to Messiah is of special interest. From the messianic view, Son of Man is a grammatical phrase, means mere mortal. So puny human, using this guy's reference in its literal sense. However, when Jesus took the title Son of Man, it was more like the Son of Man or the puny human. I don't know why they started this. That is, he was the first human to be recreated in a new Genesis as the first fruit of the success of his own work in defeating the ancient serpent and restoring paradise to mankind. Just as Adam was just a man, so Christ, from his human aspect in the God-man, was a typical man and a new Adam. So this is some guy, I don't know. Yeah, Please.
He's the first fruits of the harvest.
Yes.
And he's the first totally resurrected being in his humanity.
Yes.
And then, of course, we're going to follow him in that way. So he is already demonstrating the new heaven and the new earth in his resurrected body.
I love that. Yeah, I think this person, in trying to answer the question, is using his language and is saying Jesus is more than just identifying with humanity. He is the restoration of humanity, perhaps,
Yes.
kind of what you're saying.
Yes.
This title is intensified by rabbinic expectation of Messiah, who was considered existing before his appearing and expected to be more superhuman, if human at all. And so this is kind of interesting direction this guy goes. What did the Jews really think about their future Messiah? And this person conjectures that, well, he was some kind of human, but he's more than human. And then he goes on to say, he was not expected to be a God-man, but way above a human. Therefore, as the son of David, son of God, servant of God, eternal priest of God, and virtually the reproduction of all the Old Testament, the Son of Man established no doubt in his humanity and no doubt in what flesh he would come to die for. Yes. Yes.
So in CBS, we're studying David right now.
As a topical study?
Well,
King
we're
David's
going
life,
through
or-
First and Second Samuel.
Oh,
So
there you go. Okay.
we're studying David. So the Jews were so big on the throne of David and restoring the throne of David. And that was their sort of view of this Messiah, I think probably more than anything, was to restore maybe the glory days of Israel when David was on the throne, Solomon was on the throne, and God did promise that there would always be a
Son.
someone to sit on the throne of David. So Christ, as a descendant of David on his earthly side, takes that position of sitting on the throne of David. Now, depending on your eschatology, correct?
Yes.
You may believe, and some people do believe, that Christ will actually sit on the throne of David.
In Jerusalem once
in
again.
Jerusalem, on,
Yeah.
Whatever. So,
Yeah, I've heard that presentation. This, but I'm so glad that you bring it up this way, because when I think about all the covenants that God has made, and we
the
get,
Davidic covenant is big,
yes,
very big.
it seems to be pretty much the last one, unless you want to incorporate a priestly covenant that comes in, I think, in Ezekiel
Mhm.
as well. But all of those covenants, when you think about Noah and Abraham, who else is out there? Moses. Yeah, all of these. Thank you. That's why you guys are here. They all have some kind of sign connected to them, some kind of thing that you just connect with them.
Uh-huh.
And then, but you get to David, I'm like, what is the sign I connect to him? And you bringing up throne, I keep coming back to that.
Yes, it is the throne.
What did you say?
Sonship too.
Sonship?
Mhm.
Yeah. Now it is kind of spectacular. The book of Revelation says that believers will also sit on the throne.
Mhm. Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
No. God said it. No, what I'm saying is, okay, so in heaven, we are just gonna sit around playing harps or doing, we'll have specific tasks according
Yes.
to what God has gifted us with
Oh, I like that.
to perform for him in the new heaven and the new earth. So we will be busy, but not ornerously so, like we are here
Right.
on earth, right?
We'll be servants and we'll be blessed in our service.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Good. And sons. The picture of the ideal son is the son who goes out into the field and sweats and comes back and says, I did what you told me to do, Dad. All right, that's good input. This person gives a little footnote. Alfred Edersheim. Now, I've heard that guy's name a ton. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. My little evaluator of hearing names, and I automatically think, wait a minute, what am I supposed to know about this guy? I know he gets quoted a lot. I think he might be on the more liberal side, but anyway. Jewish historian and professor, 1800s, has a section in his book on Messiah. What Messiah did the Jews expect? So on page 163, or I guess that's what that means, he is extensive in his reference to ancient rabbinic literature. Sample quote, they convey the idea that the existence of this Messiah was regarded as pre-mundane, before the moon, before the morning star, and eternal, and his person and dignity as superior to that of men and angels. The angel of the great council, probably the angel of the face. And then when you would quote that famous Christmas verse from Micah chapter 5, verse 2, which I know someone here has memorized, about Bethlehem.
Oh, Bethlehem, you are least among the cities of Judah, but from you will come a ruler that will rule over my people Israel. Is that
Yeah,
what it says?
yeah. It was like, who is this ruler? And it says, I think it even gives us a reference to God in Micah 5:2. So it's like, well, what did the Jews really expect of their Messiah? And Mr. Edersheim, who I guess is a pretty significant scholar, because I know he gets quoted all the time, says they expected someone really big and maybe someone who has more value than the angels. What is man that you are mindful of him? You've made him a little lower than the angels. Did you know that verse is quoted twice in the Psalms? I ran into that the other day. I always thought that was Psalm 8, but it's also Psalm 114. Gets quoted again. So, whatever the Jewish people thought about their Messiah, this person's saying he was going to be a really important guy. And isn't that question from the Gospel of John says, we hear that the Messiah is supposed to live forever, or something like that? Wasn't that one of the questions they asked? Something like that. And whoever this Messiah is going to be, is going to have some kind of connection to God. But the question is, did the Jews think that the Messiah would be God himself in
I don't think they did.
human form? Would he add to himself the nature of man? Now, we talk about in our catechism that he took to himself a body and a reasoning soul. In other words, you all got a soul from somewhere. And this is the great debate about where did your soul come from? And there's the creation. Well, there's the transmigration of the soul, which is reincarnation, and Christians don't believe in that. And then there's the creation of the soul, which means that the moment you were conceived, God had your soul somewhere and popped you in and made you right there and gave you your soul right at that point.
Made your soul at that point.
Made your soul at that
I would
point.
think he would make your soul of that. I don't think he had a soul waiting.
Yeah, that'd be more Mormon, wouldn't it?
I-
Yeah. Okay. But the classic Reformed view is traducianism, which your soul comes from your mom and from your dad. And when you come together, you become your own individual soul. You have spiritual connection to your parents, soulish connections to your parents. And I see the physical connections that my children have. I say, oh, that one looks more like mom and that one looks more like dad. I pray for them. But some of my kids, I mean, I see more of my soul in them than, that's like, I told you, that's why I had to marry her, is because I needed better soul stuff to contribute to my children, because My soul wasn't going to do anything for him. So you got to find a person with a good soul. That's who you marry. So, but that's, I mean, what other options do you have? Well, Jesus had a soul. Did he get it all from Mary?
Jesus was eternal, though. I mean,
Did Jesus have an eternal soul? Did he have a human soul in eternity?
I guess that
Yeah, this
depends
isn't
how
really
you
addressed in
define
the
soul.
scripture.
It's not addressed in the
No.
scriptures, but these are the things you gotta like kind of deal with when you think about the incarnation. All this, wait, how does this all work out?
Okay,
And I
so-
guarantee you guys have spoken about it.
Souls are eternal, right?
They are eternal,
Yes.
but they're not infinite.
Forward,
No, but I'm
eternal
thinking that
backwards.
somehow I'm sort of going with the God sort of creates your soul as you are created inside your mother, because it's an eternal thing. And just the electrical impulse of you know what I'm talking about? I don't think that's enough to create an eternal something.
Well, I definitely believe we are eternal. I definitely believe that we are not something that can be discarded and cease to exist. That itself is a debated matter. But somewhere we had to start and begin, and
That mostly goes back to one's view of creation, correct?
yeah.
Because if you believe that God ceased to create on the sixth day, then you're going to have an issue with him creating a new soul every time a baby's conceived. If someone's okay with him continuing to, after his day of rest, go back and start creating, then they're going to be okay with that soul coming specifically from God saying, let there be a soul. It's kind of how people view
It's a
how
providential
they view
continuation.
Genesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, are you thinking of personality types or souls?
That gets,
Because children do inherit personalities from, you know, even grandparents and things like
Mhm.
that. So,
and you'd be surprised how some people, after they become Christians, some do, become so different that you would
oh
never
yeah, we know one
recognize them.
person that's like that.
Yeah. Brother,
Totally different.
Okay, so now
Oh, yeah.
two things. I only had one to read.
I really didn't
But-
expect to talk about this.
But it sounds like in some ways we're limiting how God can work. Just
I don't want to
because-
do that.
Just because souls may be from any of the dozen or so theories that you have on how souls could happen,
Mhm.
and we're saying that that's the only way that they could happen,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
pick one of those and that's the way, that's as far as we can get. We're limiting God on being able to do something outside of that realm.
Right.
You're going to bring in multiple universes and dimensions? Right now?
But I want a multiverse here.
But the other thing that I was gonna say that somebody mentioned afterwards, doesn't it say that God breathed life into everyone?
Well, into Adam.
Our life has been given by the breath of God, not just when he created, man in Genesis, but every time anyone is conceived, he's breathing life into them. Doesn't it say that somewhere? That we have the breath of life.
It definitely says that of Adam, and I would, by conjecture, say that that's what makes us different from the animals. God isn't breathing into the cows, and he gives us a life-giving spirit. Isn't that the word?
Mhm.
So babies obviously have to breathe in to become alive, and some people think, oh, that's only when a person becomes a person. That's how some people actually advocate.
Well, when you breathe in, it's supposed to be Yah and out way.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the sound that you make,
Did you say Yahweh?
yeah,
Boy,
So
I've
breathe
never heard that
in.
before.
just breathe in and kind of aspirate a little bit. So You kind of say God's name when you're breathing in and out.
I've never heard that before.
Job 33:4, I don't know if this is what Bob was thinking. It is the Spirit of God that made me, which has stirred me up, and the breath of the Almighty that gives me life.
Yeah, so that, I knew it was there
As
somewhere.
long as it was said by a good guy. I never like quoting Job because I never know who's saying what. Okay, like I said, I didn't intend to speak on this, but Jesus had a soul. He was completely human. He completely received humanity from Mary. Mary wasn't just a shoot, you know. He received from her personality, and so in that sense, you know, the Roman Catholics love to talk about Mary. But I'll say Mary was a very particularly wonderful woman that God chose.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that,
Yeah.
you know, because today in our little lesson at CBS, we talked about Gabriel coming to
Yeah.
Mary and talking to her. And I explained to him that, my little preschoolers,
Oh,
that she had to be a woman that had great faith in God, and she had to be a woman who knew her scriptures because
yeah.
the Messiah was promised, you know,
Yeah.
and she had to know that the angel's coming to her to tell her that she's going to be the one, and she had to be obedient too. So in that way, she's not divine like, you know,
Exactly.
Catholics believe
I
she
give
is.
props to
But
Mary
she
for being.
certainly is someone to be admired and emulated and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Point.
But I bet you when we get to heaven and talk to Mary, I bet she'll be like the, you know,
Have you met my son?
no, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think she would be the first to be like, just like we say Israel was the least and yet selected by God. It
Mhm.
wasn't because you were more powerful, or you were richer, or you were more wise that I selected you, but I selected the least. So I have a feeling that Mary additionally is incredibly humble and would say, like Paul says he's the worst of sinners.
Yeah.
I
Identified that guy.
think she would definitely say that it was God's Spirit that took her through all that was beyond what she as a human could do.
I think I got Malachi backwards. It's Malachi 2:5. You said. What was that verse?
5:2, I think.
But
There was no 5.
Oh.
Oh, I thought you said Micah.
Oh, it's Micah.
Micah
Thank
5:2,
you.
maybe that's
All right. I don't know how we got on that tangent train. Micah, where are you? Right there. But Jesus possessed our humanity in the way that we measure humanity. And okay, look at that. To be ruler over Israel, whose origin is from ancient days. I'm like, okay, what do you do with that prophecy when you're talking about your future Messiah?
Yeah.
And so when Daniel says, I saw the Ancient of Days,
that's
like,
God.
bing, bing, bing. Yeah,
That's God. Right
that's
there.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, now here's some stuff I don't know. Ben Adam in Hebrew, in Aramaic is Bar Enosh, and I don't know why. I've not studied Aramaic. What books of the Bible are written in Aramaic of the Old Testament? Which 2 have Aramaic portions? Daniel and Ezra have Aramaic sections. All right. Distinction in ancient thought between the mortal and the immortal actors in the world drama. Getting a little between humans and gods in Greek and Roman thought, and in between humans and God in Israelite thought. That to be a son of man was to mean that you were not in any way God. In the idiom of Ezekiel, Ben Adam is nothing more than mortal Joe. I don't know where these guys get their little ideas. an expression of appropriate humility in the presence of the eternal. Ezekiel has, in fact, subverted the term from its mythic use to use it as a literary antithesis emphasizing the eternity of God. This use actually results in a diminution of expression. It says here Ezekiel was a Cohen, a priest, who at the time of the exile and the return had a universalistic interpretation of the Israelite condition, that they were troublemakers. However, his prophecy is addressed to the people of Israel, of whom he sees himself not only a member. Am I seriously going to run out of power? Shouldn't have watched that video for so long. Where am I going to get power?
Those cat videos will get you every time.
Where we were watching the Coast Guard. Well, I'm going to have to run and get a cable, I think. What do I do, guys? So this brings this other option here to remind us that in Daniel 7, the reference to Son of Man is thought to be messianic, but the phrase Son of Man is different in Daniel 7 because it's in, what's the word? It's in Aramaic. So Son of Man is Ben Adam, right here, you can see that. But when we get to this Aramaic portion, it's Kedar Anish. So I don't know what's going on with our book of Daniel when it is when we get to the sections that are written in Aramaic. This sure looks like Hebrew to me, but that's an answer I can't answer right now. That's a question I can't answer right now. There's a whole portion of Daniel written, it says here, Daniel 2, 4b, all the way to 728 is written in Aramaic. And yet, when I look at it, it looks like it's Hebrew to me.
I was going to say, but in Hebrew school, you learn only Hebrew, right? So for the bar mitzvahs and stuff, maybe they've just back translated it to Hebrew for instruction purposes.
Okay, then it talks about that there was someone in heaven here. I was watching in a vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like Kebar, the son of Anash, the son of man. That is not Ben Adam. That's a different phrase altogether. And he's coming to the Ancient of Days, who we know Micah has already told us that the one born of Bethlehem will come from the Ancient of Days. All right. So you guys have to talk amongst yourself for a moment while I get my power cord. Because we're live and streaming here. And I need us to look, and I need you guys to watch here with this wonderful translation of Daniel chapter 7 from the Rashi and his interpretation in the 1300s of what he thought was going to happen. And it actually comports really well to a lot of things that are said today. What the Rashi says in the 1300s gets quoted in almost all of our churches today. He knew who those four creatures were and what they represented. He says, I was looking, and thrones were set up, and there's the Ancient of Days. And there's a description. And here's Rashi's comments right here in the dark. The Ancient of Days is the Holy One. Blessed be he. That's what you say when you mention God's name. You have to throw a blessing in there. And then there's a river flowing out of his throne. And then I saw the form of an arrogant words that the horn spoke. I looked until the beast was slain and his body was destroyed. But as for the other beasts, their dominion was removed. Did we talk about the beasts yet?
No, but this is Revelation 2. I mean, it's just like reading Revelation as well.
The first was like a lion. And he says, hey, that's Babylon. Okay? And the second beast was a bear. That's Russia, right? Well, this guy says it's Persia.
Yes.
And then he says there was one like a leopard with 4 wings. And he said that's the Greek Empire when it broke off into its 4 separate parts. The Seleucids, the Ptolemy.
Alexander, yes. And then the eagle is Rome.
And then the 4th beast, he doesn't even know what it is, but it has huge iron teeth.
That's Rome.
And he says, what does he say? Does he even tell us who these people are? The angel explained to him that these are 10 kings who would ascend the throne of Rome, like you said, and Vespasian. So the Jewish people have believed this for a long time. That now this is prophecy of future kingdoms from Daniel's perspective. And then guess who shows up? Not a beast, nothing arrogant, but here comes someone who is, where'd he go? It's 13. He says, I saw in a vision, and behold, in the clouds of the heaven, one like a man. What word did he just not give me?
Son of man.
Son of
Yeah, and it's right here.
What did he give you?
K-Bar. He just says one like a man. He doesn't, his translation of the Hebrew doesn't give me son of man. He just says one like a man, where K-Bar, Anash, is right here. Why would the Rashi do that? But then he says, one like a man was coming. What does he call that person?
King Messiah.
That is King Messiah.
Yeah.
So the Jewish people know that this is their Messiah. At least this guy's completely Orthodox. Don't tell me the Rashi isn't Orthodox.
That's why he doesn't want to give him that title.
Yeah, and what do you do with that? How does you give this guy dominion and glory and kingdoms? And the people will serve him. What kind of person is that? So it's by no coincidence that Jesus uses this title about himself being the Son of Man. I know this is just going to die and just turn off on me.
I couldn't figure out which. Where is it?
Oh, it's stuck away. This computer is, yeah. So the whole idea back to this reference to Jesus being the Son of Man. Let's see if I went to the right one. Oh, this one. This guy says, the Son of Man, which in the Bible is idiomatic for human being, and he gives me some things. Here, however, the celestial being is like a human being, has human countenance, for the author is most likely represents a heavenly figure who will exercise judgment, perhaps Michael. So it's interesting when the Jewish people are going through the wilderness, there's the angel of the Lord that accompanies them. And we say that's theophanic. We say that's Christ's presence, but it's always called an angel. And so there's this idea that,
Okay, but then it follows on. If they think it's Michael, then why would he be given, kingdoms and this and that and the other, right?
yeah,
No, because Michael's an archangel and he serves the Lord, right?
Mhm.
But Jesus is God, so he's the one that gets the kingdoms and all that. So that doesn't make any sense to say it's Michael.
yeah. Is it Gabriel's the one that comes and speaks to Mary and Joseph?
Correct.
But Michael, is he in the book of Revelation? Where's Michael
No,
show up?
He's in Daniel when
He's in Daniel.
He's in talking about how he
Yes.
couldn't get through because he was fighting with the Prince of Persia.
That's right.
And Daniel had been praying for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that the Jehovah Witnesses like Jesus to be Michael, the archangel. That's how they make their theology work. Anyways, Jesus is the heavenly Son of Man. A messianic use of this title is found in post-biblical Jewish literature, in Enoch, in Ezra, Second Esdras, and in the Sanhedrin tractates. Some rabbis rejected the future messianic interpretation by arguing either that the prediction had all been fulfilled in the past, or that Daniel's prediction did not include the end time. Later Jewish tradition of the messianic interpretation faded, and one like a human being was being seen as representing Israel. And that today is pretty much what modern Jewry, I don't know how to say that, rabbinic teaching can only personify the whole nation of Israel as being the fulfillment of all those messianic passages that we say, no, that's Christ. And the Jewish people cannot do that. And they say, no, that's really a picture of all of us collectively. We're the son. But we already made the distinction that there are sons of Israel and there's a son of man. So they are pushing the interpretive envelope to say all those passages can't speak of a Messiah. They really speak of a future glorified Israel. So, all right. Well, that's kind of wanted to get to, is to also mention that Daniel later is called a son of man himself when God speaks to him. But this son of man in Daniel, in the vision, is definitely someone who's has heavenly residence, an eternal being of some nature. And Jesus, out of all the things he calls himself, leans on that one the most. All right. Any comments right before the computer dies?
I have a question. Maybe
Good input tonight, by the
I
way.
missed out on whatever was going on last time, but I think Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man because while he was on earth, he was more identifying with his humanity. I mean, not that he wasn't both, he was, but
Right.
he was identifying with us and going through the things that we go through so that he would be our high priest that can sympathize with us. So maybe he called himself that more here on earth because that's the part of his nature that was, I don't even know how to say it.
Well, I think you're kind of on the track to some of the things that were said on Sunday.
Yeah.
And what was really being emphasized on Sunday. So yeah, I don't discount anything that you're saying. I think that's right on point. But if you want to really,
So maybe now that he's in heaven, he wouldn't necessarily emphasize that part of his nature. You know what I'm saying?
well, he still has that nature.
Well, I know. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that is, gone away with or anything like that. I'm
Right.
just saying that maybe that's not the forefront of his role, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he also say that you'll see the Son of Man sitting on the clouds coming in glory?
Yeah, that's basically quoting Daniel chapter 7 right there. And that's why the high priests tear their clothes and
Yeah, and have a fit.
clothes him. Yeah, call him a blasphemer.
Yes.
So, so definitely he's come here to fulfill something that the Jewish people could not conceptualize completely. They had a Messiah figure. He was superhuman. He was maybe even almost angelic. But was he both God and man at the same time? They did not conceptualize that. And even the Rashi has a role for a Messiah ben David and a Messiah ben Joseph. They've got two Messiahs. One Messiah that suffers and is killed, and then a Messiah who is victorious and fulfills, the great roles of King David, because there's just too many messianic passages that show a suffering servant and a victorious servant, and they had no way to reconcile that into one person.
Exactly.
So they had to come up with two figures, one to precede the victorious one, that the one who was the suffering servant would do his role and then cause Israel to mourn, and they would look upon him whom they pierced, and they were like, yeah, we really treated him badly. We should receive this guy and follow what he says, type of scenario. But
So in other words, like two separate messiahs.
yeah. So, but calling himself the Son of Man, definitely, it is also interesting to think, apart from the fact that the emphasis of his humanity and his humility, is that one book describes someone. It was cool to read Micah 5, another reference to the Ancient of Days, someone coming from the Ancient of Days, because we can clearly, and even the Rashi says, that's God, he's there, he's the Holy One, blessed be he. But this other figure who comes and becomes greater than those terrible animals, it's actually a man who's going to be the ruler and sustainer of a future kingdom. It's not going to be some mythic creature, some kind of a griffin or whatever. It's going to be a man, and he's going to bring about a kingdom where everyone will serve him. All right, just trying to clarify some thoughts for Sunday, things we've talked about before, but I just wanted to do like a real consistent presentation on the narrative this Lord's Day. Anyone have some other input about Son of Man references? So that's really weird when you read like that most famous verse. I don't know if it's most famous, I'm just coming up with this. For the Son of Man came to serve and not to be served, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Wait a minute, the Son of Man is the one who served in that vision? And you're just doing the exact opposite. That's confusing. So, and there's a lot of Son of Man verses, over 80 of them. So you got to take them all and. All right. Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Appreciate your input greatly.
Okay, here's another thought.
Okay.
Maybe Israel saw themselves as the suffering servant part, right? So maybe
They can.
they don't think that that's necessarily going to be some one person. Maybe they see themselves collectively as that suffering, the one that has suffered, the one that has, gone through all these trials and everything like that, and has been wounded for their
Transgression.
well, no, but
Okay.
but wounded for their distinct belief in God and their the way they try to keep his law, or,
Yeah.
you know
Well,
what
it's
I'm
kind of
saying?
connected to that covenant keeping. Because if you don't keep the covenant, if my people who are called by my name,
You don't-
then I will
Exactly.
bring healing to their land. But right now, you've got bugs eating your crops, you got invaders, you've got droughts, and you just have to remember to call on me again and turn from their wicked ways. Okay? Yeah.
Would the title, the Son of Man, would it be a more humbling and humiliating title compared to like if you were to call himself Son of Israel?
Or son of David.
Yes.
When I started just reading people's idea of what it meant to be Son of Man, the word humility was always connected to it. It is a title of humility to identify with us.
You think there's a Genesis 3 like proto-evangelion tie-in where like there's this seed of man that's gonna come and crush the serpent, so he's that ultimate seed, or he is the son.
Oh,
When it
yeah.
comes to fulfill the promise that was given to Adam. He is the son of Adam.
Yes, he is. He is the promised son of Adam to come. The seed, singular seed. Yeah, I think we should really hold that in understanding that. I think it's very appropriate.
You had asked a question at the very beginning about Adam and why he keeps the name.
Oh, yeah.
I read a translation from a scholar at Hillsdale College. He did like a Genesis translation. And that verse where it says, he made Adam out of the dust. The two Hebrew words are real similar. And he translates it a little bit differently. He uses the word humus for dirt.
Humus.
Right, and human for Adam.
Oh.
So Adam is human, but he's from the humus. So the words are very similar. And so there's a tie-in, not that he's just a man, but he is from the created earth.
Yeah.
So that's probably why that name sticks.
Okay.
Is that too far?
No, that's fine. What is that verse? Remember that you are but dust. I mean, from dust to dust. From dust you came, to dust you shall return.
Isn't that from when he was talking to Adam?
I think so. Part of the curse. Yeah.
We don't have a similar language for soil that sounds like Adam, so that's I think why he's using humus to kind of make the alliteration stick or say or come over to the.
There's also scholarly discussion about Ish and Isha, how closely those are connected to each other, and how English does a great job with man, woman, and some of the other languages have really close connections with those two categories, but then there's some languages that it doesn't work. So it's good to know the Hebrew, how closely linked that they are to one another. But yeah, it's good. All right. We'll then close in prayer. You're not watching that. Okay. The concert in Connecticut. Dear Lord, thank you for your word. And we know in your words, and we talked about that Muslim preacher who saw words and they filled his heart with intrigue and then gave him a change of heart. And we know that your words are there to reveal yourself and to give us clues into what you were doing and what you will do. And just pray that all of our hearts resonate with these things and put our confidence in your word, and also enough confidence just to proclaim it to others, and so that they might hear the truth and love the word like we do. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.